They say revenge is a dish best served cold. For me, it's been marinating for over a decade. My name is Nathan Carter, though it wasn't always. I used to be Nathan Sullivan, son of Richard Sullivan, the man who built Maxwell Solutions from the ground up with nothing but vision, grit, and honour. That was before Victor Langston sunk his claws into it, poisoned it from within, and rebranded it as Langston Enterprises. He didn't just take the company, he took my father's life. Dad died of a heart attack 6 months after the hostile takeover. The doctors called it natural. I called it heartbreak. After his death, I disappeared. I had no choice. If I was going to bring Langston down, I couldn't be Nathan Sullivan, grieving son. I had to become someone else. Someone invisible, quiet, careful, a ghost with a plan. That's when Nathan Carter was born. I took the most mundane path imaginable, finance. While Victor built empires on flashy press releases and dirty deals, I sat quietly in the corner of the Langston Glass Tower, analysing spreadsheets and sipping burnt office coffee. Just another analyst, unnoticed, underestimated. But I was watching. I was listening. Every memo, every slip-up, every shady deal, I was there, taking notes, building a case, waiting. Victor thought he'd buried my father's legacy forever. What he didn't know was that I had inherited more than my father's name. I inherited his fire, his sense of justice, and his long memory. And now, 10 years later, I'm ready. 10 years. That's how long I gave myself. 10 years to build the tools I'd need to bury Victor Langston. Slowly, silently, and completely. The first step was money. Without it, revenge is just a fantasy. I studied the markets obsessively, investing in undervalued tech and biotech startups. I lived cheap, no vacations, no luxuries, not even a decent apartment. Every cent went into building my portfolio. I turned my modest inheritance into a multi-million-dollar shadow fund by the time I was 30. But cash alone wouldn't be enough. I needed leverage. So, I created a company. On paper, anyway. Vantage Capital. It looked like any other investment group. Sleek website, vague mission statement, a virtual office in Manhattan. No one knew it was just me pulling the strings behind the curtain. Through Vantage, I started acquiring properties. Quietly, carefully, and always through shell companies to hide the trail. The crown jewel came 5 years into the plan. The building that housed Langston Enterprises headquarters. I smiled the day the papers were signed. Victor Langston was now a tenant in a building owned by the son of the man he destroyed. Poetic justice, but not yet the final blow. Meanwhile, inside Langston Enterprises, I played the long game. I volunteered for grunt work, gained access to internal systems, and built a reputation as dependable and dull. Invisible, just the way I needed to be. All while collecting data, offshore accounts, falsified earnings reports, bribery records. I gathered everything, time-stamped and archived. The hardest part was patience. There were nights I wanted to scream, to confront him right then and there. But that wouldn't serve my father's memory. This had to be perfect. And now I have it all. The building, the evidence, the control. Victor Langston doesn't know it yet, but the walls are closing in. The trap is set. Tomorrow I spring it. The call came at 7:43 a.m, an emergency board meeting, top floor conference room. B. I knew it was coming. Langston's legal team must have discovered my access to the internal files. Took them long enough. I wore my usual grey suit, no tie, just another faceless number on the payroll. But my heart was steady. Today wasn't just a confrontation. It was an execution. Years of strategy led to this. Victor Langston stood at the head of the table, flanked by his lapdog executives and a very nervous head of security. He didn't sit. He liked to tower over people, dominate the room. Not today. Nathan, he said, voice cold. We have reason to believe you've been accessing confidential files beyond your clearance. Care to explain? I looked around the table, locking eyes with the others. Some complicit, some just cowards. Then I turned back to Victor. I don't owe you an explanation, I said calmly, but I'll give you one anyway. The room shifted. Unease rippled across their faces. My name isn't Nathan Carter. It's Nathan Sullivan. Victor's mouth twitched. I watched the colour drain from his face. He knew the name. Of course he did. My father was Richard Sullivan. He built this company before you carved it up and stamped your name on the ruins. A few gasps. A few people leaned forward, eyes wide. I dropped a manila folder onto the table. Dozens of pages spilled out. Documents, emails, spreadsheets. Truth. Everything you've done, the off-the-books bonuses, the cooked ledgers, the foreign kickbacks, it's all here, dated, verified, and ready for the SEC. Victor reached for the folder, but I slapped my hand down on it. You don't get to touch this. I stood slow and deliberate. And one more thing, I said, pulling out a separate document and sliding it across the table. This is your lease termination notice, effective immediately. What? He snarled. I own this building. Vantage Capital, that's me. You've been paying rent to the son of the man you betrayed for the last 5 years. He was silent, for the first time, truly silent. The room was frozen. No one spoke, no one moved. I leaned in slightly, just enough for him to hear. You destroyed a good man. Today, his legacy takes everything back. Then, I walked out, let them clean up the mess. By noon, the news had already hit the wires. Langston Enterprises under federal investigation. Stock plummeted. Phones rang off the hook. Shareholders panicked. Some of the very people who once mocked my quiet presence now whispered my name with a mix of awe and fear. Victor Langston locked himself in his office for most of the day. I didn't care. He was finished, whether he walked out or was dragged out. The SEC had enough to freeze accounts, issue subpoenas, and launch a full audit. And I had made sure the right reporters received enough breadcrumbs to start digging fast. But my plan didn't end with destruction. That would have been too easy. My father didn't believe in leaving things broken. He built things. So would I. By 2 p.m., I sent a mass internal memo, not as an employee, but as the new acting CEO of the restructured entity that would rise from Langston's ashes. Sullivan Technologies. I held an open meeting in the main hall. Employees filed in cautiously, confused, some still in shock. I stood on the small platform at the front of the room, facing the very people I had worked beside, in silence for so long. I know many of you are wondering what happens next, I said. So here it is. No more lies, no more fear, and no more games. I outlined the plan. Full transparency, generous severance for anyone who wanted to leave, and new employment contracts for those who chose to stay, with better pay, healthcare, and a stake in the company's future. The applause was hesitant at first. Then it grew. People came up to me afterward, some in tears, some shaking my hand like I was a ghost they never expected to meet. Others looked unsure, wary of yet another leader promising change. I didn't blame them. Trust would take time. As I walked through the halls later that evening, past the glass offices and tired faces, I saw something new. Hope. The poison Victor had spread for years was being drained, one room at a time. He built an empire on greed. I would build something stronger, something real. And it was only just beginning. The building was quieter now, even though the work hadn't stopped. Most of Victor Langston's old guard had either jumped ship or been escorted out. Some left with briefcases held tight, others with eyes low and shoulders slumped. The ones who stayed, those who chose to, were the real heartbeat of this place. They were tired of surviving someone else's chaos. Now, they had a stake in something new. I stood by the tall windows of what used to be Victor's office, now mine, and looked out over the city. The skyline hadn't changed, but everything else had. I'd done what I came here to do. I'd taken back what was stolen. But revenge, it didn't feel like I thought it would. There was no rush of triumph, no cinematic satisfaction, just silence, a space where pain used to live. I thought I was building toward a moment, a confrontation, an end. But what I found was a beginning. Sullivan Technologies wasn't just a name. It was a return to the core values my father lived by: integrity, innovation, and treating people like people, not numbers on a balance sheet. I brought in new leadership, real talent who understood people as well as profit. We shifted focus to ethical, AI, clean tech, and data security. Not because it looked good in a press release, but because it was right. Every decision I made, I asked myself, would my father have been proud of this? That was my compass. There were still long nights, still risk. But the fear was gone. The hiding was over. One afternoon, as I was walking through the floor, a young intern stopped me. She looked nervous, like she wasn't sure if she should say what she was thinking. I just wanted to say, "Thank you," she said softly. "This place feels different now. Better." I nodded, throat tight, and simply said, "You're welcome." That was it. Not headlines or press coverage, just that small, honest moment. I didn't need to be the hero. I just needed to do what was right. And I did. The old sign came down just after sunrise. I stood outside with a few early risers from the team as the crane lifted the rusted Langston Enterprises lettering off the facade. No speeches, no music, just the quiet sound of metal being removed, piece by piece. The past being peeled away. In its place, bold and clean, gleamed the new sign. ** Sullivan Technologies ***. For a long time, I couldn't look at that name without pain. Now, I saw something else. Honor. Legacy. A future. It wasn't just my father's name anymore. It was a promise. There was a time when I would have watched this moment with clenched fists, still full of anger. But that part of me, he's gone now. He served his purpose. What remains is someone I barely recognize in the mirror, steadier, clearer. A leader, maybe. At least one trying to be. The office feels different these days. Warmer. The energy's shifted. People smile in the halls. Doors stay open. Ideas are shared without fear. That's something Victor Langston could never manufacture. Trust. Some nights I still work late, walking the floor when it's quiet. I pass by the desk where I once sat, unnoticed. I don't erase that part of the story. It made me who I am. But I don't live there anymore. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about building. About creating something that outlasts pain. I often think about what my father would say if he saw all this. Maybe he'd put a hand on my shoulder. Maybe he'd just nod. But I know, in my heart, he'd be proud. And for the first time in a long time, so am I. The skyline is the same, but everything below it has changed. Sullivan Technologies stands now, not as a monument to what was lost, but to what can be rebuilt. From ashes to legacy, from silence to voice, from revenge to hope.